Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cellular Wisdom, the show where we shine a bright light on health myths and sift through the facts with equal parts curiosity and humor. I'm Ethan Foster, your resident observer of all things hilariously human. Some call me the comedic archaeologist, unearthing humor in the everyday.
And I'm Alara Skye, armed with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. I was voted most likely to turn a health fact into a punchline back in high school. Sadly, I'm still waiting for the trophy.
You can have mine. I won most likely to bore people with sarcasm.
Trust me, I have plenty of sarcasm trophies stacked up already. Anyway, let's get down to business. Today, we're venturing into the world of metabolic health, regenerative agriculture, and a whole bunch of fun words like phytoestrogens, PUFAs, and linoleic acid.
If it sounds like we're about to crack open some advanced chemistry textbook, rest assured we'll try to keep it entertaining. Or at least, we'll keep each other awake.
That's all we can hope for, Ethan. And here's the kicker. This entire deep dive is inspired by none other than Dr. Joseph Mercola, whose new book, Your Guide to Cellular Health, Unlocking the Science of Longevity and Joy, has apparently rocketed to bestseller status.
Which begs the question, is the joy in the science or in the unlocking?
My guess? Probably in the fact we're all trying to figure out how to stay on this planet without falling apart at the seams. As Dr. Mercola puts it, it's all about giving the body the tools it needs and taking away the metabolic brakes.
Metabolic breaks? Are we talking about the kind that let you sit down with a donut?
You'd be surprised, but the answer might be yes, if it's a donut that doesn't sabotage your metabolism. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the real star of the show, Ashley Armstrong, co-founder of Angel Acres Egg Co., who realized that it's not just about raising chickens, it's about raising an entirely new approach to health.
Right. Ashley discovered that her own autoimmune issues were linked to, shall we say, unfortunate dietary choices. This led her down a rabbit hole of low-carb diets, then carnivore, and eventually to the work of Dr. Ray Peat.
And once you go down a Ray Peat rabbit hole, your social media feed never looks the same again.
I hear once you join the Low PUFA fan club, you're contractually obligated to talk about your body temperature at all social gatherings.
Exactly. Because, apparently, measuring your body temperature 3 times a day is the new black. You do it upon waking, after breakfast, and midday. It's like the metabolic version of checking your phone notifications. But the big difference is body temperature can clue you into real-time metabolic health.
And apparently, if you're hitting 98.6 degrees midday, that's like the metabolism's way of saying, we're good, folks, nothing to see here.
Precisely. If you can roast marshmallows by your own internal furnace, you're winning.
Let's not forget the role of carbs. Ashley's big revelation was that drastically low-carb diets might give you temporary relief, but can also lead to elevated cortisol, muscle wasting, and all sorts of unspeakable horrors, like the dreaded slump when you realize you're missing out on fruit.
The real secret, apparently, is that you need about 250 grams of carbohydrates a day just to keep your metabolic engine revving. Lower than that, and you risk turning your body into a cortisol factory. And no one wants to hold a grand opening for a cortisol factory.
The entire concept revolves around bridging the gap between eat healthy and farm healthy. Ashley Armstrong realized that if the chickens were chowing down on feed stuffed with PUFAs, guess what ends up in your eggs?
Exactly. Too many PUFAs will sabotage your metabolic health. That's because PUFAs, especially linoleic acid, interfere with thyroid function, hamper your ability to detoxify estrogen, and basically throw a wrench in your cellular energy production.
Who would have guessed that an innocent bag of feed can shape the entire health profile of an egg?
Right? And that's why Ashley's pushing for regenerative agriculture. Soil quality matters, feed content matters. It's a domino effect that ends in our breakfast plate.
Speaking of breakfast plates, freeze-dried egg yolks are apparently the new superhero of convenience. They last forever, they don't spoil, and they're loaded with nutrients.
If you told me I'd be sipping a freeze-dried egg yolk smoothie for breakfast, I might have made a face. But now it's all the rage in the we love carbs but hate PUFAs community.
That is one exclusive club.
Very exclusive. So exclusive, I'm waiting for my membership card. Let's talk about the real reason behind freeze-dried yolks. When you remove moisture, you preserve the nutrients and lengthen shelf life.
If only I could do that to my leftover pizza. Freeze-dried pepperoni, anyone?
I'd say skip the pepperoni for now. We're told it might have hidden PUFAs and phytoestrogens that could sabotage your health. I can already see a line of new PUFA-free pepperoni labels at the grocery store.
Wait, speaking of phytoestrogens, soy and flax are some of the main culprits, right?
Bingo. The big concern is that phytoestrogens activate estrogen receptors. So if you're guzzling soy milk thinking it's the healthy alternative, you might be inadvertently messing up your hormone balance.
Great. Another reason for me to stare at the grocery shelves in existential dread.
Don't worry. You'll at least burn calories from the anxiety. But let's not forget endocrine-disrupting chemicals. They come in from microplastics and keep piling on the estrogenic load.
So, the next time I drink water out of a plastic bottle, I might just be sipping extra estrogen?
Potentially. They say estrogen is anti-metabolic and can hamper mitochondrial function. In short, you can feel sluggish, moody, and all around suboptimal. It's basically like giving your cells 10 extra pounds of baggage to carry.
So that's where progesterone might come into the picture, right? Because if you have too much estrogen, you want something that can bring balance.
Exactly. But again, that's a conversation best had with the entire system in mind. Diet, lifestyle, environment. There's no single magic bullet, as fun as that would be.
I picture a lonely silver bullet labeled hormonal harmony, but apparently it doesn't exist.
Right. So, back to Ashley's overarching point. We can't fix our health without fixing the way our food is produced. The economy and sustainability of small-scale farms matter. Farmers shouldn't have to work 2 jobs just to keep their farms afloat.
Indeed. She pointed out how federal subsidies often prop up the overproduction of soy and corn, leading to cheaper feed that's high in PUFAs. But if people shift their purchasing power to regenerative products, eventually the market responds.
Simple, right? We just need to collectively decide we want healthy eggs. Problem solved.
If only it were that simple. But let's say one day it might be. Meanwhile, Dr. Mercola is also launching his Mercola Health Coach app and Mercola Health Labs to make lab testing more accessible so we can actually see how our body is doing.
Lab tests are going mainstream, baby. No more ignoring the numbers. Soon you'll be tapping your phone to check your T3 levels, your magnesium, or your PUFA load, or something else equally enthralling.
Which is so interesting because conventional blood work doesn't always tell the full story. Sometimes your labs say you're normal, but your body temperature says, hey buddy, the furnace is out.
Right. So Dr. Mercola's approach is that real-time data matters, and you can measure your body temperature at home without shelling out a fortune. It's like the ultimate citizen science.
Hey, it's cheaper than an ancestry test, that's for sure, and it might be more helpful than learning your 2% part Viking.
Precisely. Next up, let's talk about that 250 grams of carbs. That number is thrown around like it's the golden threshold for metabolic happiness. But it's not just random. If you go too low, your body freaks out, cranks up the cortisol, and your thyroid is left in the dust.
So the typical approach is not to jump to 250 if you've been living on 1 carrot stick a day. Instead, you reintroduce carbs gradually, maybe focusing on those that don't cause major digestive drama.
Right. If I recall, Dr. Mercola's traffic light system in his new bestseller sorts carbs into green, yellow, and red. We're basically talking about building a responsible relationship with carbs.
Like the Tinder of carbohydrates. Swipe right on oranges, swipe left on Twinkies.
Exactly. And in the context of thyroid health, you need enough energy to convert T4 to T3. If you're starved of glucose, that conversion might stall, and you end up feeling colder than my ex's heart.
That's cold. Very cold. Let's pivot to the freeze-dried egg yolks again, because I can't get over the idea of sprinkling them on everything.
It's the new Parmesan cheese, and it's nutrient-dense, loaded with vitamins K2, choline, and probably some other things that keep your brain from becoming oatmeal.
Sounds like an improvement. Choline's important for that neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. That's key for the parasympathetic nervous system, right?
You got it. That's the rest and digest side of the autonomic nervous system, which too many of us ignore. We're all stuck in fight or flight answering emails, so it's no wonder we can't remember where we put our keys.
Guilty as charged. At least we have an excuse now. If I forget my keys, I'll just say, not enough freeze-dried yolks this morning, sorry.
That might actually work once, but if you keep using it, your friends might hold an intervention.
Duly noted. Let's address how all this ties into autoimmune issues because Ashley Armstrong's sister, Sarah, was diagnosed with lupus at 21. They realized diet was a massive factor.
Right. And they tried keto, fasting, and carnivore. Those gave short-term relief, but didn't solve the underlying metabolic or thyroid issues. They eventually found Dr. Ray Peat's work, which led them to more balanced nutrition with sufficient carbs.
The moral here is that short-term diet experiments might be helpful, but you have to keep evolving. If you hit a wall, maybe it's time to revisit your assumptions.
Or consult someone who's looked at these things more holistically.
Indeed. Now, can we circle back to the estrogen factor one more time? Because the phrase estrogen is anti-metabolic is living rent-free in my head.
Sure. The gist is that too much estrogen in the tissues is like a giant anchor on your metabolism. So if your labs say your estrogen is low, it might just be low in your blood, not in your tissues.
That's because serum estrogen levels might not reflect what's actually stored in your tissues or organs.
Precisely. So you might feel all the symptoms of high estrogen while your doctor's telling you, no, your labs look fine. That's where measuring prolactin might be more revealing, because estrogen triggers higher prolactin.
The more you know. Now, let's talk about regenerative agriculture again, because I want to make sure we drive home the point that it's not just about feeling superior at the farmer's market.
Right. Regenerative agriculture is about building healthier soil, which grows healthier crops, which feed healthier animals, which eventually feed healthier humans. It's a chain reaction of positivity.
Ashley said that working with row crop partners regeneratively means they're not dumping a bunch of synthetic inputs on the soil. Instead, they're working with Mother Nature.
Which is a lot more fun than working against her. She always wins anyway.
And the payoff is eggs that are way lower in linoleic acid. In fact, Ashley's eggs have a 76% reduction in LA compared to typical, cage-free, or even organic eggs.
That's huge. And Dr. Mercola says we should only consume around 2 to 3% of our daily calories from LA. It's easy to blow past that if you're eating foods from animals fed a high PUFA diet.
So yes, you might need 4 or 5 of Ashley's eggs to match the LA in 1 or 2 standard eggs. That's a game changer.
For those who like math, the lower LA eggs clock in at something like 0.24% of daily calories from LA if you eat 4 of them. Meanwhile, typical eggs might be 1% or more.
And all those percentages add up. If you're not careful, you can easily exceed Dr. Mercola's recommended 2 to 3% a day, simply by eating conventional eggs, chicken, or pork that's high in PUFAs.
That's why Ashley also co-founded Nourish Food Club, offering low PUFA chicken and pork, A2 dairy, and all these other goodies that reduce our exposure to those troublesome fats.
Basically, it's a club for people who want to eat bacon without letting it sabotage their metabolism.
Precisely. In the bigger picture, the standard farming system is about profit margins, mass production, and convenience. That's led to cheaper feed, but also more health problems.
Right? We're in a cycle where big agriculture and big pharma dominate. Then we wonder why we're dealing with an epidemic of chronic health issues.
And that's where folks like Ashley Armstrong and Dr. Mercola come in, trying to build alternative markets, so farmers don't have to conform to the PUFA-laden norm.
Exactly. Let's shift gears for a second to talk about the upcoming Mercola Health Coach app. It'll integrate with Mercola Health Labs so people can do advanced lab work at a fraction of the price.
It's going to help people see data, like blood markers for thyroid health, hormone balance, and probably keep track of their body temperature.
They'll also have Food Buddy, a feature that helps people navigate daily food choices, which is good because my biggest headache is figuring out if I can eat a banana without dooming my metabolism.
The app might become your new best friend, especially if it can politely remind you to put down the seed oils.
That's the million-dollar question. Will an app ever be polite, or will it just beep at me like a disappointed mother?
We'll find out soon enough. But the point is that the app is one more tool in the belt for understanding our own health data. Empowerment is the name of the game these days.
Let's talk about the practicality of body temperature checks. People might say, why do I need to measure my temperature if I feel fine?
Because feeling fine is subjective. You might be functioning at 70% of your metabolic capacity and not even realize it. A midday temperature consistently under 98.6 indicates your furnace is set to medium-low.
Meanwhile, you could be following the latest diet fad, thinking you're on track when your cells are quietly whimpering.
Exactly. And we're told that if your temperature starts rising after you adjust your diet, maybe more healthy carbs, maybe cutting down on seed oils, that means you're on the right track.
It's like getting immediate feedback rather than waiting months for the next round of blood tests that might not even show what's really happening at the cellular level.
That's the big difference. This is real-time metabolic monitoring.
So how about summarizing some practical steps for folks who are intrigued?
Sure. 1. Ensure sufficient healthy carbs. 2. Track body temperature. 3. Avoid foods high in PUFAs and phytoestrogens. 4. Incorporate nutrient-dense foods like saturated fats, quality dairy, and, yes, egg yolks. 5. Support regenerative agriculture.
Because every purchase is like casting a vote for the kind of world we want, right?
Yes, that's about as political as I get these days.
This might sound like a lot to keep track of. Carbs, PUFAs, body temp, estrogen levels, but it's worth it for that sweet moment when you realize you have actual energy.
It's the difference between dragging yourself out of bed and bouncing out of bed. Some folks think it's normal to feel tired all the time, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Right? So if you wake up cold, you skip breakfast, and then you wonder why you're cranky by noon, maybe it's time to revisit that carb threshold.
Indeed. And if your idea of a balanced breakfast is black coffee and a glass of water, your thyroid might be on the verge of writing you a strongly worded letter.
Let's talk about the future. Ashley Armstrong envisions a world where small farms thrive, grocery stores are filled with low PUFA options, and freeze-dried yolks are as common as dried fruit.
It's a future where we're not held captive by big ag and big pharma. And Dr. Mercola's new bestseller is an instruction manual for that future, focusing on giving your cells what they need to maintain optimal energy production.
And it's not just about living longer, it's about living better. That's the whole angle behind longevity and joy, right?
Precisely. If you're going to be around for an extra few decades, you might as well feel amazing.
Now, if I can just figure out how to adopt some chickens in my apartment, I'll be set.
I'm sure your neighbors will love that. Especially if you invite them over for a big freeze-dried yolk tasting.
I'll pass out disclaimers like, beware, your metabolism might skyrocket.
That actually sounds like the best kind of hazard. By the way, we have to mention that Ashley Armstrong's Angel Acres Egg Club now has boxes ready for shipping. People can finally get these low LA eggs without waiting a year.
That's a relief. The waiting list was longer than my grocery bill.
And for those who want more than eggs, there's Nourish Food Club for low PUFA chicken, pork, grass-fed beef and lamb, sourdough bread. Basically all the stuff you'd see in a vintage painting of a farmhouse feast.
Except, ironically, it's more modern than ever, because it's powered by advanced knowledge of metabolic health.
Right. Sometimes the future is about going back to old-school practices. We realize nature had it right all along. Just do it with a bit more data and a few more scientific studies under our belt.
So, the big takeaways: don't fear carbs, measure your body temperature, avoid PUFAs and phytoestrogens, support regenerative agriculture, and consider freeze-dried yolks if you want a convenient nutritional powerhouse.
That about sums it up. And add in the upcoming Mercola Health Coach app if you want deeper data-driven guidance.
Sounds like a plan. You know what we haven't talked about? That sense of empowerment that comes from taking charge of your health instead of handing it off to the nearest billboard advertisement.
Exactly. Ashley Armstrong's journey is a testament to that. She and her sister recognized that mainstream approaches weren't helping. They took a deeper dive, found alternative research, and ended up spearheading an entire regenerative movement.
People sometimes think you need a PhD to figure out your own health, but sometimes you just need a good thermometer and a willingness to experiment.
And a sense of humor helps. If you can't laugh at yourself while chugging your daily dose of carrot juice or freeze-dried yolk concoction, then it might be a long journey.
Yes, laughter is good for the parasympathetic nervous system. That's my theory anyway.
I'm sure there's a study out there. Let's talk about the potential ripple effects. If enough people adopt these practices, demand for high PUFA feed will decrease, farmers will pivot, and eventually we might see a systemic shift.
That would be the best case scenario. More local, sustainable farms, less reliance on cheap feed, healthier animals, healthier humans.
And more comedic material for us. Because can you imagine how many jokes we can make about naming our backyard chickens?
Don't get me started. I'd name mine Captain Cluck, General Tso, or maybe something less punny. Actually, who am I kidding? I live for puns.
Let's keep the poultry puns minimal. People might start questioning our comedic credentials.
Fair enough. As we come to the end of this conversation, let's remind everyone, Dr. Mercola's new book is out. Ashley Armstrong's eggs are out. The message is out. Now it's a matter of taking action.
That's right. No more blaming genetics or aging for everything. We have more control over our well-being than we realize.
And that's the essence of cellular wisdom. We're literally talking about the intelligence within our cells, how to fuel them, protect them, and keep them chugging along like the world's happiest little power plants.
Picture your mitochondria throwing a daily dance party if that helps. Because a healthy cell is a happy cell, and a happy cell makes for a happier you.
Indeed. I think that's a decent place to wrap up. We've covered everything from freeze-dried egg yolks to endocrine disruptors, from body temperature to regenerative farming.
So if you're still confused about how it all ties together, here's the final comedic recap. Don't starve your body of carbs, feed your chickens the good stuff, freeze-dry your yolks, measure your temperature, say no to PUFAs and random phytoestrogens, and consider an app to keep you on track. Simple as that.
And do it all while cracking a smile. Because if you can't laugh while building your metabolic empire, what's the point?
Exactly, Ethan. Thank you all for tuning in to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, where we dissect health myths with a scalpel and a smile.
We hope you learned something that will help you steer your metabolic ship in the right direction. Or, at the very least, gave you a chuckle or two along the way.
Remember, health is a journey, not a sprint. Unless you enjoy sprinting, in which case, measure your body temperature afterward.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, I'm Ethan Foster.
And I'm Alara Sky, reminding you that your cells are listening, so feed them well and keep them warm.
Take care, folks.
Wait, Ethan, did you remember to bring me those freeze-dried yolks you promised?
Absolutely. They're in my backpack, right next to my comedic timing manual.
Good. Because my comedic timing might be top-notch, but my breakfast routine needs serious work.
No problem. Now, if I can just find that thermometer...
Always an adventure, Ethan. Always.
Take care, everyone, and keep that internal furnace stoked.